this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is Kitchen Time Part 2, where we get the plants from Part 1 potted up. There aren't going to be any mounts, they are all going in pots. And stuff we've got, time did half go, didn't it? Just now I was drinking coffee. Actually, that was a long time ago I was drinking coffee. Where did that day go? Well, it went anyway. And we got quite a lot of work done, so I'm pleased. Right, stuff I've got: Burnham's bark, Burnham's charcoal. Let's get that open, and then it will fall over and go all over the place. So Burnham's bark, Burnham's charcoal. I've got some coconut husk into soak. I always soak it when I'm going to use it for potting, because it's normally, I mean, sometimes I use it neat, and I may even do that with one or two of these, but normally it's going to get mixed in with dry bark and dry charcoal, and it sucks the moisture straight out of this, leaving it very, very dry. And in a pot, once it dries out completely, it's a bit of a pain to wet again, unless you soak the pot. But when you pour the water through, it whizzes through so quick, because you've got really good drainage, essential, that it hardly has time to get damp, let alone wet. So that's into soak. I've got some of the large chunky bark up here for going in the bottom of pots. That's not Burnham's bark, that came from Speciotics. And I've got some small stakes. If I need any big stakes, which I may well do, they're in the cupboard behind me. I'll get them as and when I need them, and some raffia for tying, and I've got my scissors should I need them. Various pots of various sizes. I've got some of these wide flat pots. I know I'm going to need at least one of them, that's why I brought some of those out. In the last potting video, people asked where I got those. They come from Peter White, Orchid Accessories, which is a UK seller. They were made as a job lot for a purpose. Yeah, I don't know what it was. It might have been a bulb exhibition, you know, with sort of daffodils in. I don't know what it was for, but it was for some special event, and they were made in bulk for that event. And at the end there were quite a lot left over, and Peter White bought them up. So you probably won't get them anywhere else. But wide, flat, plenty of drainage. So I grabbed quite a few of those while I was at it. I've got one of those opaque ones. If I need any more, I'll go and get one. Go and see. And then the rest are just assorted pots. You know, I mean, these are opaque. These are quite nice pots. These have come from, well, that one is. That with a number on it probably came from Jeff's. That had one of Jeff's plants in. There's one that I've made holes in the past. Various. As I say, they vary. All of these, I doubt if many of them have been bought. They've you know, had plants in them that have since been repotted. So we have an assortment. I bought some tiny little ones out, but I may not need them. In fact, I'm pretty sure I won't need them. They can go up there. Right, these are not getting potted up in any particular order. They are as they come off the draining board behind me. As simple as that. There. Right, and the first one is Dendrobium Tie Angel. Now this is a Phalaenopsis type. This is it's got some new roots coming. This is a Dendrobium that likes to stay warm year round, and it can't. In my environment, it's going to get colder in the winter than it would prefer to do, and as a consequence it will stop growing, or at least slow down to a snail's pace where you can't even see that it's growing. So it's as good as, damn it, stopped. And if it's stopped growing, it's not going to use water and nutrients, it's just going to remain static. And if the root mass stays wet during those low temperatures and short days, they will rot. So I have to have the ability for this to dry out fast and stay dry for a bit. So drier in winter. In my case, but it shouldn't be. It should be growing all year round, basically. So to enable that to dry in the winter, It doesn't need a big pot, something like that. I'll probably do, if I can get it in. Yeah, that'll go in there, up against the back of the plant, because it's a division. Back of the plant against the pot, leaving all of this for the new growths. So that'll be fine, that's plenty big enough. And we put a couple of big bits in the bottom, just so that the holes in the bottom of the pot don't get blocked up. And then, because I want this to dry in the winter, this is not having any cocoa husk. This is going to have Burnham's bark, which is quite small, and I will put some larger bark in with it so that there's some big bits that won't stay wet. Those areas with those big bits will just dry out. And then we'll pour some charcoal in. Still not quite sure why I use the charcoal. Now, because quite a lot of charcoal came out, I'm going to mix enough for 2 plants here, because I know I've got another one. Otherwise that was a bit heavy on the bark. And then we'll chuck a few more big chunks in. Right, so that's a mix that in the growing season will hold some moisture, but in the season where I want it to dry pretty quick, it should do, because there's going to be plenty of air in there. Bit of that in the bottom. These lovely big fat chunky roots on this this plant. You don't normally get them as chunky as that on Phalaenopsis type Dendrobiums, but pleased with that. And then just fill in the gaps. Trying to get some of these big chunks at the base of the plant, so that the base of the plant can't stay too wet because it's got a flipping great chunk of bark underneath it. So I'm positioning those one at a time. I'm actually manually putting them where I want them, and then we'll just fill in. Don't need a huge amount of media around the back of the plant, simply because it's never going to grow any roots around there. So just enough to hopefully get the flipping thing to stand up. I may well have to stake it, but we'll go on the grounds that we're not going to have to. Now, these roots are quite sturdy, and they'll take a little bit of pushing and shoving, but if you go too mad they will snap. And don't forget, at the base of that this growth I do have some new nubbins. They might only be nubbins, but they can still get snapped off. But round the outside I should be able to do a little bit of pushing to enable that to steady itself up. Yeah, it's not going to stay, is it? Now, can I get one of these in good enough to hold a Dendrobium in place? Stay. So I just grabbed a handful of clips. Now, what size clip? No, it's going to have to go round there, isn't it? Right, so the idea now is to put a clip round. Put a clip round just above where the cane starts to get thin. So there's a fat bit in the middle, then it starts to slim down. By putting the clip there, it should stop it sliding around. And I think we could stand doing another one. Extra support. So we'll chuck another one down in there. We will. We will. You are going to go in there. Gotcha. Gotcha. And then again, we'll just put a clip round the where it starts to get thinner. It stops it sliding down. That's all it's for. So there we go. 2 stakes, and that does have a label somewhere here. Thai Angel. And there we go. Label round the back out the way. So that's that one done. One done. Next I will do the other Dendrobium, simply because that was what I was thinking. What I had in mind is I've got 2 that I want in the same mix. See, I need some of those in between size pots. Go from that to that. They are around, but not really. Several places in the States that do them. They're 8cm pots is what I'm after. And they seem to go from 6 to 9. Nothing in between. I'll have another look round at Sarah's one in there next time, but I don't think she's got that size either. As I say, it just goes from small to big, which is a bit of a nuisance, but so be it. Right, and this one might actually stand up on its own. Again, oldest part of the plant towards the edge of the pot, new growth in the middle. Now this has a whole section of viable roots here, which I don't want up against the edge of the pot. So I'm going to hold those away from the edge of the pot and fill that gap up before I start pushing the rest in. Now I'll fill up the gap underneath the plant, and in there again we'll have some chunky stuff so that the base of the plant doesn't stay wet in the winter. Blackbird's singing its head off out there. Probably means we're about to have a storm. They often preempt a storm by singing away, and then they often do it again when the storm blows over and the sun comes out. It's not because they're pleased to see the sun, it's because the female's on a nest somewhere, I suspect. It's a reassurance song plus a territorial song saying, "This is my patch, clear off." And the female can hear the song thinking, everything's okay, hubby's around. It's that sort of thing. Right, let's see if we can get one of these to sit nicely. Probably only need one this time. That's a bet I haven't got the right size clip. Oh, there's a bit of wire there, that will do. It's plastic coated wire, it's soft coated wire, it's not going to pinch it too tight. Right, is that good enough? I do believe it is. Jolly good. Right, so that's 2 done. Base of the plant exposed, just sitting on the top. New growth just above the media. New roots will go straight down in. That's 2 done. Most of that media used up, which is good. I know something that hasn't been used up yet. That. This is keeping me awake, juice, this is. Woke up at 4 o'clock this morning. Couldn't get back to sleep, so got up. I've been up since 4. It's a long time. And I haven't sat down much at all. Well, I do, first thing in the day I sit down, that's all I do. I do all my computer stuff, so obviously that's just sitting there. With relatively frequent breaks to come out in the kitchen and get more coffee. But we've gone past the coffee time. Now these are both the same, and I'm going to put them in the same pot, quite honestly. How small a pot can I get them in? I don't think I can get them in that size, can I? Do you know I can? They're going to go in there. They're going to go in that tiny little pot. It's going to be a squeeze and it's going to be difficult. Now we're into Oncidium types now. Am I getting in a muddle here? I'll hope not. Because if you remember, I've got 2 plants here. No, it's alright. The other one was a big one. Yeah. I had two plants that had very, very similar blooms, so they're almost identical, and I separated the plants by the media they were in. And obviously I want to keep those two plants separate because although they're similar, they're not the same. So we're switching to Oncidium. So why have I got two? Because it came from, yeah, it's alright. I need to get this clear in my head to see if these two do go in the same pot, and they do. Yes, that was the plant that came out of the growing area at Wilhelm's. And as it's an odont type, they don't like to go dry. So with this mix, we'll add in some cocoa husk. And again, I'm mixing up a fair bit because I should probably do several pots with this stuff. Now the cocoa husk is, it's got a lot of different, it's got fibrous stuff in it. It's got some quite chunky stuff in it that's rock hard or very hard. It's also got some chunky stuff that's soft. You can just pull it apart. So it's quite a variety of, it's got some big chunks, you won't break that one's rock hard. So it's a variety, and I quite like that variety in the pot because it's got some fibrous stuff which I assume stays wet pretty good. And then it's got some smaller chunks and some bigger chunks, and within that there's soft bits and hard bits, so there's an awful lot of variety for the roots to, you know, to deal with. And in amongst that lot there must be something the roots like. I swear, look at it. Come on, you've got a choice of everything. Surely something suits you. Right, now we've got a new growth there. And a little new growth. See, I'm not sure that bit's going to grow, so I don't want that anywhere where it interferes with the rest of the plant. Let it go flat there. Yes. So that's it. It's going to go like that. All bulbs at the same height. There's one of those little fungus gnats flying around that is really annoying me. It keeps flying right past the end of my nose. I'll have it in a minute. We hope. So we have to put this in a little bit at a time because the cocoa husk is wet. And if I chuck too much in, it'll stick to the roots and leave a great big gap. It won't go down in. It hangs on, which is why I like to pot dry. But with this stuff, it's catch-22. If I pot with it dry, then it'll be a bit of a pain to try and wet it again. And if I pot with it wet, it sticks, which means I have to push it down, you know, which subjects the roots to a bit of stress. You can still be gentle. You can still push stuff down the side of a pot without being brutal. At least this won't need staking. Now that little new growth there is quite high, so I'm actually going to top that media up to get it up to where the base of that new growth is, which is a bit higher than I wanted. The other new growth is there. I've put a stake in there to hold that plant away from the edge of the pot. It's not to hold it still, it's to hold it in the place that I want it. And that didn't go in very well, did it? Well, that's why. The media's a bit loose down that side. Right, try again. That's better. I just want to hold that back there to give that new growth some room. And then this one, do the same thing. Let's push it back with a stake. No need to strap it or anything, the stake will just lean against the plant and hold it in position like that. So that's that one done. Did we have a tag for that? Don't think so. Well, we did, but it's an Oncidium hybrid, so you know, it doesn't need a tag. Not at the moment. I'll sort something out. So that's that one. And then the other one that's the same but not is the big one. So this is the one that was in the cocoa peat and for once has the better set of roots, and it's a large set of roots, so it can't go in the tiny little pot. I'm hoping it's going to go in that opaque one. Yeah, that'll go in there. Jolly good. Oh, cat. Look at me, I haven't got anything for you. You've got food in your dish. You're not having sweets. I'm not having sweets, so you're not having sweets. Elvis is a strange cat. He will sit like he is now, probably off camera, right in front of his dish, and he'll stare at it and he'll keep looking. Well, he's not going to do it now because I'm talking, but he will stare at it and keep looking over his shoulder at me as if to say, I want food. And he's got food in his dish, but if I get his biscuit box and shake it over his dish and 2 biscuits fall out, he'll then sit down and eat because I've added 2 new biscuits in there. He's a strange cat, he really is. He's not quite right, I don't think. Getting a bit senile like me. They are getting on a bit, those cats. I mean, they're 16. 2 brothers, if you didn't know. They were rescue cats. So the daughter had them for her birthday. It was a present when she lived with her mum. And her mum decided that she didn't like cats, and so she banished them to the shed in the winter time. Sort of minus temperatures, so they were out in the shed with the window open so they could get in and out. So Anna pleaded with me, could I look after them for her? Because in those days I lived quite close, and they used to come and visit every other weekend for the weekend, so you know, she wasn't far away from her cats and could see them frequently. So, but now she's got her own place and her own cats. Well, these are strictly speaking her cats. And she actually said, I want my cats back, and she had to have them. They are hers technically, even though I've had them for, it must be 10 years now. And I would miss them incredibly if they weren't here. And one day they won't be. We just have to, if you're going to have pets, you have to prepare yourself for that day, because that day will come. So, that's not going to be very nice, but you have pets, that's what's going to happen. Unfortunately, that's how it is. So if you don't want to go through that, then don't get the pets, because it's going to happen. I'd like to get that flipping number off, but I don't like that. Probably not. Oh yeah. There we go. Right, so that's that one done. And that's the other one that's virtually the same bloom, so Odontoglossums. And that is an awful lot of air down that bit. I'll have to get some more down in there. That's better. So there was quite a lot of loose gap there. Just sort of fill that now. That'll do. Right, so that's that one done. Right. Treading on the stuff that I've dropped. Where's the cleaner? Ah, just can't get the staff, can you? Right, now next we've got these 2 little ones. I've completely forgotten what these are. Now that's the one that came out of the moss, which is totally unknown. There's an awful lot of no ID stuff going through this batch, isn't there? The 2 Dendrobiums is about all there is with the name. Oh, and the Coelogyne. Everything else is like no ID. So that's the one that I rescued that came out of the moss. And it's only just come out of the moss. It hasn't got a brilliant root system. And I got a feeling that one of these is going to be too big. It is, it's too big. It's going to have to go back in a tiny one. Oh, I must get some of those in between ones. So this is the same size pot as it's just come out of. The difference is it will be going in media. And it's an Oncidium type of some sort. As I said, it could be that Peter Comp. But as it's an Oncidium type and it's still a form of rescue, I want it in a tight mix. You know, I don't want lots of air. I want those roots touching. So we'll have Burnham's bark, a bit of charcoal, and we will put some coconut husk in there. And if any big bits come out, we'll take them out. I want small bits. So there's a big bit, you can go back in there. I just want small bits this time, just to help keep it a bit moister, because it's still really a sort of rescue. Right, that sort of seems okay. Ugh, dirty hands. No crocking, pot's not big enough. Put crocking in there, there'll be no room. And then you can just sit gently on there. So these two roots have got growing tips on, they're the ones that were in the bottom. So I don't want those damaged, I just want those sitting on that media I've just put in there. And I'll twist the plant slightly, and then our new growth's there with some nubbins where new roots will come out. And then just tip this down the sides. Try and fill in all the gaps. Tap it down and press it down slightly, very slightly. And that's good. One root ended up on the edge of the pot, and that one as well, I can see it. So that will show me that they carry on growing, because I can actually see them. 9 times out of 10 when you pot something up like this, the growing tips are on the, you know, inside the pot somewhere, and you can't see them. So you don't know whether they're actually growing or whether they're dead. Right, so that's that little one done. And then this one, I think, can have exactly the same treatment. Now this one, again, no ID, but we do sort of know what it is because it was in bloom when I got it from Derek's. Very, very attractive bloom, and an Odontoglossum type. So again, cooler grower, and I really don't want to put that in a big pot. So how do we turn a big pot into a smaller pot? We do that. So nearly half the pot now is crocking. So it's now a pot that's only that deep. Yeah? That's how to turn a big pot into a small pot. You could use the polystyrene bits for that, or chunks of rock, lava rock, but basically all you've done is, you know, taken a third of the pot away from the normal media. So it is a bigger pot this time, I will need a bit more mix. And same mix again, Odontoglossum type, so likes to stay moist, doesn't like dry periods, but if it's not in active growth, virtually dry in between waterings, because it's not going to use it, keep them soggy when they're not growing, that's how you get the root rot. Bearing in mind, mine will not be growing in perfect conditions, because in the summer it'll be too warm. Right, so same sort of mix as the last one, and as I say, we've got half the pot, or nearly half the pot, is now crocking, and we can just sit the plant. We've got a new growth on this, yeah, around there, white one. Why is it a white one? Well, because it had a sheath over it, so it was in the dark, or not in the bright light. And not a bad root system on this one, not bad at all. So this one should pick up quite nicely. It's got growing tips on the roots, and I'm potting it quite low in the pot, so it's not only got a lot of crocking in the pot, it's not potted right up to the top of the pot. It's quite shallow. So it's only actually got about that much media in it. Let's see if I can get it near the camera. The media really goes from there to there. So it's actually quite a shallow mix. And if the root system really takes off and cracks on, then I can lift it out, put it in a deeper pot. You know, just lift it out. Most of the media will come out with the roots if it's taken off. And then just put it back in a pot that's got deeper media in it and less crocking. Right, so that's that one. The pot's too big really, but there was a big enough root system that I'd have probably damaged those roots if I tried to get them in that tiny little size pot. And we can see one root with a growing tip and another one there. So that's that one. That leaves one, and that's the Coelogyne. And that is why I bought the wide flat pots, because I knew I had one of these that is linear, one pseudobulb after the other. It's going to grow across the pot, and I don't want to take the old bulbs off. So by potting it around that point, the new growth is bang in the middle of the pot. So even if it heads off to the side, it's still got the same distance to the edge of the pot. Now the problem I've got at the moment is I've run out of Wilhelm's bark, so I will have to break off and get some more. Now again, this Coelogyne has got growing root tips. Now not all, but most Coelogynes are relatively shallow rooters. Not all, some of them like a deep pot, you know, like sort of Oncidium type depth. But a lot of them are shallow rooted, so I'm going to split the difference because I don't know about this one. And the fact that it's some sort of hybrid as well. I haven't looked up to see what that hybrid's made up of. I'm going to split the difference and have quite a bit of crocking and plant it quite low in the pot again. Yeah, so that I've reduced the depth of the media that it's got. But I shall have to break off to go and get some more media. I'll be back. Right, mix for this one, similar, but not too much of the cocoa husk this time. I'll put a bit in. I have to mix up a fair bit because it's quite a large pot. I'm hoping it'll grow into it. So that's our basic mix. I could just use that and not put any cocoa husk in, but we'll add some in, give it a bit of moisture retention, which is what I use this for. But not heavy on it. Again, a Coelogyne has a tendency to have quite a spurt, a growing spurt, at which point it needs feeding and watering well. But then when all of that's mature, unless it's producing flower spikes at that time, because it's that type, then it's going to stop. And when it stops, it doesn't need to stay wet. So you've got to go careful with Coelogynes. If you keep them wet when they're not growing, you can lose your root system. So, well, it's the same with all orchids, isn't it, really? I keep saying it over and over again. It's the same thing, really. They're not growing, they don't need to stay wet. And this is where the confusion comes, because there are some orchids that basically never stop growing. Things like Masdevallias, Draculas, quite a few of the pleurothalids, they don't ever stop growing. They're always pushing up new growths. You know, they just keep going all the time, and as a consequence they shouldn't dry out. They'll have periods when they're not growing as much, where you might want to let them get a little bit drier, but certainly not dry. Now, are you going to stand up on your own? A bit wobbly. I'm just digging the back bulb out. Although it's relatively flat, that back bulb was in a bit deep, so I've just dug the the stuff out. See, this would be almost impossible to stake, but it could be done. What we would do is we would put a stake in right next to that bulb, like that, and then put a tight clip on it right at the base of the leaves, like that. And that'll stop it wobbling, or virtually stop it wobbling. So there we go, that is the lot. 5 plants. I'll just I'll turn the camera off for a minute and then get the mess out of the way and bring the plants back so that we can have a final look at them. Okay, so a reasonable afternoon's work, albeit late afternoon, nearly tea time. Right, so we've got the Latoria type, Dendrobium alexandrae, new growth, not very good roots, but new roots will come now with that new growth. One stake, just holding one cane to steady the plant, which it has done fine. So that's that one. The Phalaenopsis type Dendrobium, Thai Angel, that needed 2 stakes, but it is very top heavy. Now that has no new growth and has the signs of the new roots just starting. It does have some roots, but they're not that viable. They're not very good, but they're capable of hydrating the plant to some extent. So that's that one. Then we've got our Coelogyne. Now that pot looks far too big, but I'm hoping the plant will grow into it, quite honestly. I mean, I'm hoping that this new growth, because this has got reasonable roots with growing tips, so it's got an active root system, the new growth will produce more roots, so it should have a more than adequate root system. And this latest growth here should actually be at least similar sized to that. So that gets it, you know, halfway across the pot plus a bit, and then we'll see what it does from there. As I said, at the moment the growth is linear, but you know, once a plant like this gets its strength, it will often get a bulb that's got excess energy and it will produce 2 growths instead of 1, and there's your split. That gives you your 2 leads then. And then it heads off in different directions, hits the side of the pot, and you end up having to split it. All good fun. Right, I forget which way round these 2 are, but 2 little Oncidium types. This is in a pot that's a bit too big really, so what we did was we put an awful lot of crocking in there and planted it low. So in fact we've turned a larger pot into a small one, and I've got growing tips that I can see, so I should be able to monitor its progress and make sure it carries on okay. This one has gone in a pot that's too small because I need the size of the pots in between. Must have another concerted effort at trying to find those. Schwerter in Germany do them, but they charge €25 for postage for 1 pot. If you buy 1 pot at whatever, you know, next to no money, you still pay €25 postage. It's a fixed charge, but you can have as much as you like for that, I believe. It's just that if you're only buying pots, it's a very incredibly expensive way to buy pots. Okay, this was one of the Odontoglossum types with the orange and white blooms. 2 plants in there. That one with a new growth and some root sign, and this one on the better plant with a better, stronger new growth, but no roots yet, but they will come. And then this was the other plant, the same. We've got 2 new growths in here somewhere. There's one of them I can never find. Well, there's one there, so there's 1 new growth there. There's another one somewhere. I'm sure there's 2 somewhere. Oh, I can't see it. It's in there somewhere. There's definitely 2. So basically this one had some reasonable roots. This one should grow on quite nicely and hopefully will bloom again on at least one of the new growths. No reason why not. It's a strong plant. So there we go, an afternoon of unpotting followed by potting in part 2. looking through my notes, I've still got more repotting to do. I stopped partway round the watering today and said that's enough for one session. 7 plants is enough for a session. Could have done with 1 or 2 less really. But looking at my notes, I've got at least 1 more session like this and possibly 2. And then that's it. So we're getting there. And the season is going on, so I need to get cracking on them. As I said, I might do 1 session and not film it at all, just crack on with it basically, because it does slow me down. And yeah, split into 2 parts as before. People seem to like it that way, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.